Hey YouTube! So I was on my channel the other day and talking with someone in the comments about photosynthesis, oxygen, and carbon dioxide levels in a tank. And I figured that it might be a cool topic to talk about and kind of break down the science into something simple and easy to digest for newcomers to keeping tanks. And obviously, oxygen is an important component for keeping your fish healthy. And CO2 obviously is important to keep your plants healthy. So keeping them in balance is important. And knowing how plants use oxygen and carbon dioxide is an important thing. And one of the things I noticed is that a lot of people kind of know what photosynthesis is, but they don't know or haven't heard of respiration. Plants actually use both. So I was going to break it down for you. So let's get into it. So what is photosynthesis for those that haven't really kind of been shared or told about it? Well, basically, it's the conversion of carbon dioxide, CO2, and water into sugar with the use of sunlight. All the green cells in most plants are typically filled with these things called chloroplasts. And they basically take the water and CO2 and do that conversion in the presence of sunlight. And then the only byproduct other than, there's two byproducts of that. Sugar, so that's your energy molecule, if you will. It's not a unit of energy per se, but it's basically just like the human body where sugars are used as a source of energy. So glucose is created through that process, and it also gives off oxygen. So a lot of people realize that on Earth, for example, we exhale CO2, and the trees around us use it to breathe in, essentially, and they breathe out oxygen. Well, that's photosynthesis. So basically, again, they're taking CO2 out of the system, in this case a tank, and they're creating energy using the sunlight, or light in this case, from my LED, and they waste off oxygen. And that oxygen enriches the tank for the fish. So that's a good thing. So you can see how a healthy planted tank is going to help you with the overall water chemistry for your fish. They're happy in the environment. It's well oxygenated. It takes very little. But what happens when the lights go off? What happens during nighttime? Well, photosynthesis stops. But respiration continues. What is respiration? So any living organism has to convert that glucose, those energy molecules, into actual usable energy. So what does that do? Well, in the process of cellular respiration, it takes those sugars in the presence of oxygen, breaks it down into energy or heat, and converts it all back to carbon dioxide and water. It's basically photosynthesis in reverse in the absence of light. So respiration is going all day long. And so during the daytime, everything is in balance. You have the plants absorbing the carbon dioxide and releasing the oxygen. And of course, the fish are breathing the oxygen and they off-gas carbon dioxide. And it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship. As well as the plant, when it's in growth, it's going to be using that energy, breaking it down, and giving off carbon dioxide, albeit less than what it's consumed earlier. So during the day, everything is kind of symbiotic. But at night, maybe not so much, especially in a closed tank, a closed system like an aquarium, because there's no more photosynthesis. So what's going on then is you've got a buildup of carbon dioxide potentially going on, because no longer is the plants consuming CO2 during photosynthesis, but it's breaking down all the sugars in its system into energy and releasing more CO2. So what that tends to do over time is increases your carbon dioxide in the tank. So what tends to happen in your tank is you've got this cycle, a carbon dioxide cycle. And the more CO2 in your water, the higher your acidity, or said differently, the lower your pH. So when you're looking at your test strips and whatnot, you're looking for levels less than 7. Now I have a slightly acidic tank under normal circumstances, but the trick is to really keep it as stable as possible. You want that fluctuation to be as flat as possible as opposed to extremes. Extremes can lead to stress in your fish, even fish death. One thing to understand how the gills work of a fish, if there's an excess of CO2 in the water, they can't off-gas, their gills can't off-gas that excess CO2 in their bloodstreams, and so it basically suffocates them. So this is essentially a big problem for CO2 systems. If you have a planted tank and you use a CO2 system, this is just a small off-the-shelf cheap one, it is absolutely essential that you shut that off during the night. Why? Because there's no photosynthesis going on to eat up that excess CO2 and help with plant growth. So what tends to happen at night, all that CO2 just keeps on getting richer and richer and richer in your system, in your tank, and the fish really get uncomfortable quick. So something to think about. Now, that CO2 concentration isn't really going to be helped by adding oxygen. It's really more important to reduce your CO2 load in your water. But at the same time, I still like to, just out of preference, to turn on my air stone at night just to kind of give them a little oxygen-rich environment. I think I could get away without it now, especially with my plants being so healthy. And everyone seems to be doing good. So hopefully that kind of breaks it down for you. Don't forget, there's a whole respiration cycle that is always ongoing all night long. And by remembering that, you'll always keep your critters healthy and happy. And kind of getting in here, my battery just decided to bark at me here. So I'm going to sign off before it kills. And hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Talk to you later.